You've been the only one in the room who saw what was happening, the only one who knew it was wrong, and you stood there, heart pounding, wondering if you should say something or stay quiet and keep your position. 2,600 years ago, a man stood in that exact position. He was African. He was an outsider. He held no real power, and in front of him, in a muddy pit beneath the palace, a prophet was dying. He didn't even have a real name. What we call him, Ebed-Melech, is a title. It means servant of the king. But God spoke 4 sentences directly to this man. 4 sentences he said to no one else in the entire book of Jeremiah. And the last sentence contains a word, one Hebrew word, that connects this man to the most famous prophecy in the Old Testament. Almost nobody catches it. This isn't a story about war. It's a story about the man nobody remembers, and the God who remembers everyone. Let me set the scene. It's 589 BC. Jerusalem is surrounded. The Babylonian army, the most powerful military force on earth, has been camped outside the walls for months. Inside the city, food is running out. People are starving. And the prophet Jeremiah, the one man telling the truth about what's coming, has just been thrown into a cistern full of mud by the very officials who are supposed to protect the nation. Everyone in that palace had a choice. Every official, every advisor, every servant, and every single one of them looked the other way. Everyone except one. Let's open the scroll. Jeremiah chapter 38, verse 7. Now when Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon. One verse. That's all it takes. In one line, the Bible introduces a man by his title, his origin, and his position. Ethiopian, eunuch, a servant in someone else's palace. Now, to understand what happens next, you need to know what just happened. Verses 1 through 6, the verses right before this, describe 4 princes of Judah going to King Zedekiah. They tell the king that Jeremiah is a traitor, that his message, surrender to Babylon or die, is weakening the army, and the king, a man history remembers as one of the weakest rulers Judah ever had, hands Jeremiah over. He is in your hands, he says. The king can do nothing against you. They take Jeremiah and lower him into a cistern. No water, just mud. And the prophet sinks. But there's something hidden in this man's name, in the original Hebrew, that most English readers completely miss. It's not just a name. It might not even be a name at all. We'll get there in 60 seconds. Verse 8. Ebed-Melech went forth out of the king's house and spake to the king. Stop right there. Think about what this means. The princes just convinced the king to hand over Jeremiah. The political pressure is enormous. Everyone has fallen in line. And this man, a foreigner, an outsider, someone with no political leverage, walks out of the palace, finds the king sitting at the Benjamin gate, and speaks directly to his face. Verse 9. My lord the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon, and he is like to die for hunger in the place where he is, for there is no more bread in the city. Now, I want to be clear. We're exploring this as students of history and scripture. This isn't about predicting the future. This is about understanding a pattern of who God sees when everyone else looks away. And what we find is remarkable. Now, here's what I promised you. His name, Ebed-Melech. In the original Hebrew, it's 2 words Ebed, meaning servant, and Melech, meaning king, servant of the king. But here's what stopped me. The Brown Driver Briggs Lexicon, one of the most respected Hebrew dictionaries in the world, notes that this may not be a personal name at all, It may be a title, a job description, servant of the king. This man may have never had his own name recorded. The Bible gives us his title, his ethnicity, his position, but not his name. And yet God spoke to him by this title, personally, directly, as if to say, I know who you are, even if no one else does. Verses 10 through 13. The king gives the order, take 30 men and pull Jeremiah out before he dies. And watch what Ebed-Melech does next. He doesn't just throw ropes down. He goes to the storehouse, finds old rags, worn-out clothes. Verse 12, put now these old cast clouts and rotten rags under thine armholes, under the cords. He's padding the ropes. He's protecting the prophet's skin. This man isn't just saving a life. He's preserving dignity. In the middle of a siege, in the middle of a famine, he takes time to make sure. Jeremiah is not hurt by the very rescue itself. Picture this: a man kneeling at the edge of a dark pit, torchlight flickering, his hands carefully wrapping old cloth around rough ropes. Below him, a prophet covered in mud, barely breathing, and around him, an entire city pretending this isn't happening. So Jeremiah is pulled out, he's alive, and Ebed-Melech goes back to his post. But here's what's coming. In a matter of months, Babylon will break through these walls. The king will be captured. His sons will be executed in front of him. His eyes will be gouged out. The temple will burn, and every prince who threw Jeremiah into that pit, every one of them, will face judgment. But God pulls Jeremiah aside and says 4 sentences, just 4, to the African servant. And the last word of those 4 sentences is a Hebrew word that also appears in one of the most famous prophecies in the entire Bible. Stay with me. To understand who Ebed-Melech really was, we need to understand where he came from. The Bible calls him the Ethiopian, but that English word doesn't tell us much. In Hebrew, the word is Cushite, meaning a man from Cush. And Cush was not what most people imagine. The Kingdom of Cush, located in what is now Sudan and northern Ethiopia, was one of the great powers of the ancient world. This was not a small tribal group. This was an empire. The Cushites built pyramids, more pyramids, in fact, than Egypt. They controlled gold mines that made them wealthy beyond measure, and their military reputation was legendary. The prophet Isaiah himself described the Cushites as a people feared near and far, a nation mighty and conquering. That's Isaiah chapter 18, verse 2. And here's a detail that will surprise you. This was not the first time a Cushite had defended Jerusalem. More than a century before Ebed-Melech, in 701 BC, a Cushite king named Taharka in Egyptian records, marched his army north to defend King Hezekiah against the Assyrian siege. 2 Kings chapter 19 verse 9 records it. An African king leading an African army, defending the holy city. So when Ebed-Melech stood in that palace, he stood in a long line of Cushites who had a deep, documented connection to Jerusalem. Imagine the dust. Thousands of Cushite soldiers crossing the Sinai, shields catching the desert sun, marching toward Jerusalem to face the most feared army on earth. That's the heritage Ebed-Melech carried in his blood. But by 589 BC, Cush's military glory had faded. The Assyrians had pushed them back. Egypt had reasserted control. And men like Ebed-Melech, Cushites serving in foreign courts, were no longer kings. They were officials, servants. The Hebrew word used here is saris, sometimes translated eunuch, sometimes simply court official. Scholars debate which meaning applies. Either way, Ebed-Melech was a man operating far from home, in a system that was not built for him. Now, let's talk about what was happening inside those walls. The siege of Jerusalem began around December 5, 89 BC. Nebuchadnezzar had tried diplomacy first. He'd installed Zedekiah as a vassal king after deposing his nephew Jehoiakim in 597 BC. But Zedekiah, despite Jeremiah's repeated warnings, entered into a secret alliance with Pharaoh Hophra of Egypt and rebelled. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. The Babylonian army surrounded the city. For 18 months, some sources say closer to 30 months. Jerusalem held on, but the situation inside was desperate. Jeremiah chapter 52 and the book of Lamentations describe it in agonizing detail. Famine so severe that, according to Lamentations chapter 4, the hands of compassionate women boiled their own children. The streets were filled with the dying, and in the middle of this, while the walls were still holding, while there was still time to act, Jeremiah was preaching surrender. He was telling anyone who would listen, "Go out to the Babylonians, and you will live. Stay, and you will die." Can you imagine being a government official and hearing that? Your own prophet is telling the people to surrender. The princes saw this as treason, and from a purely military perspective, you can understand their panic. Jeremiah wasn't just speaking against the war, he was, in their eyes, collapsing morale from the inside. So they did what people in power have always done to truth-tellers. They tried to silence him. Imagine standing in that room. The air is thick, not just with tension, but with hunger. The smell of a starving city seeping through the stone walls. 4 princes shouting at the king. The king, exhausted, giving in, and behind them, watching, listening, a Cushite official who has no seat at that table, no voice in that debate, no reason, by any political calculation, to get involved. But he does. Now here's where it connects to something that happened in our lifetime. In 2005, archaeologist Dr. Eilat Mazar was excavating the city of David, the oldest part of Jerusalem, when her team found a tiny clay seal, a bulla, about the size of a fingernail. Pressed into it, in ancient Hebrew script, were the words, "Belonging to Yehuchal, son of Shelemiyahu, son of Shavi." Yehuchal, Jehukal, the same Jehukal mentioned in Jeremiah 38 verse 1, one of the 4 princes who threw Jeremiah into the cistern. 3 years later, 2008, just a few yards from where the first seal was found, Mazar's team discovered a second bulla. This one read, "Belonging to Gedaliah, son of Pashur." Gedaliah, son of Pashur, the second name in Jeremiah 38 verse 1. 2 of the 4 men who condemned Jeremiah to die in that pit. Their personal seals, found in the same excavation, yards apart, dated to the exact same period. The villains of this story left their fingerprints in the dirt, and archaeology dug them up. Remember what I said at the beginning. This is a story about the man nobody remembers. Well, we've now held the seals of the men who tried to kill the prophet. Their names survived. Their clay survived. But Ebed-Melech, no seal, no bulla, no inscription with his name, because he may not have even had one. And yet, he is the one God spoke to. Now let's go back to the text. The siege tightens. Month after month. The Egyptian army that Zedekiah had been counting on briefly appears and then retreats. Jeremiah tells the king privately, "Surrender, and you and your family will live. Resist, and this city will burn." Zedekiah is afraid, not of Babylon, but of the Judean deserters. He's afraid of what his own people will do to him if he gives in. Now I need you to hold 2 images in your mind. On one side, a king who has every resource, every title, every advantage, and is paralyzed by fear. On the other, a foreign servant with no name, no power, no safety net, who acts anyway. That contrast is the heartbeat of this entire story. And then, July 587 BC, the walls are breached, the Babylonians pour in. Zedekiah flees at night through a gate near the king's garden. He's caught near Jericho, brought before Nebuchadnezzar at Riblah. His sons are executed before his eyes. Then his eyes are put out. He's bound in chains and dragged to Babylon, where he will die blind and broken. The princes, Gedaliah, Jehukal, and the rest, are either killed or exiled. The temple burns, the city falls. Everything Jeremiah had warned about comes true. Everything. See it with me. The night sky over Jerusalem glowing orange. Stone walls cracking in the heat. The sound of a civilization collapsing in on itself. 20 generations of kings. The temple Solomon built. The ark that once sat in the Holy of Holies. All of it. Ash. And somewhere in the chaos, alive, is a Cushite servant with no name. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you 3 things. The 4 sentences God spoke only to Ebed-Melech, a single Hebrew word in those sentences, that links this African servant to Isaiah's suffering servant. And the one reason God gives, for why this man was spared when an entire nation was not. The third one is the part that will change how you read this book. Now let's open Jeremiah chapter 39, verses 15 through 18. This is God speaking through Jeremiah, directly to one man. And I need you to listen carefully, because what you're about to hear, God said to no one else in this entire book. Not to the king, not to the priests, not to the nobles, to a Cushite servant. Verse 15. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah. While he was shut up in the court of the prison, notice the timing. This isn't after the rescue. This is while Jeremiah is still confined. God is already preparing the reward before the city falls. Verse 16. Go and speak to Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will bring my words upon this city for evil, and not for good, and they shall be accomplished in that day before thee. God is telling Ebed-Melech, you will see the destruction. You will watch it happen. The city will burn in front of your eyes. But watch what comes next, because the next 2 sentences are the turn. Verse 17. But I will deliver thee in that day, saith the Lord, and thou shalt not be given into the hand of the men of whom thou art afraid. Verse 18. For I will surely deliver thee, and thou shalt not fall by the sword, but thy life shall be for a prey unto thee, because thou hast put thy trust in me, saith the Lord. Now let's put this side by side. The king, Zedekiah, had every advantage: throne, army, advisors, priests, and his fate captured at Jericho. Sons executed, eyes gouged, chained and dragged to Babylon, dead in a foreign prison. The princes, Gedaliah, Jehukal, and the others who threw Jeremiah into the pit. We hold their seals in our hands today, but their bodies lost to history, killed or exiled. Their names survive on clay. Their lives did not. And Ebed-Melech, the man with no personal name, the foreigner, the outsider, the one with no political leverage, no army, no title beyond servant of the king. God spoke to him personally, by title, and said, you will live. So ask yourself, what made the difference? Same city, same siege, same destruction, different outcomes. What separated Ebed-Melech from every other person in that palace? The answer is in one word. The last phrase of verse 18. Thy life shall be for a prey unto thee. The English word prey doesn't capture it. In Hebrew, The word is shalal. Strong's number H7998. It means spoil, plunder, the treasure a soldier rips from the battlefield after victory. But here, God flips the word. He's saying when everything is taken, when the city burns, when the temple falls, when the gold is looted, and the people are dragged away in chains, your life will be your spoil. Your existence is the only treasure you walk away with, and it is enough, because I gave it to you. Now here's where it gets extraordinary. That same word, shalal, appears in one of the most famous prophecies in the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 53, verse 12. The suffering servant passage. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. The spoil, shalal. Same word, Ebed-Melech. Ebed means servant. The suffering servant of Isaiah, Ebed, YHWA, means servant of the Lord. Both are servants. Both receive shalal, the spoil that comes through suffering. I'm not saying Ebed-Melech is the suffering servant. That would be reading too much into the text. But the language, the deliberate echo of these words, suggests that the writers of Scripture saw something in this Cushite official that pointed forward. A servant who suffers. A servant who is rewarded. A servant whose reward is life itself. Let me paint you a picture. The morning after, Jerusalem is rubble. Smoke rises from where the temple once stood, bodies in the streets, chains clanking as the survivors are herded east toward Babylon. And one man walks through it all, untouched. Not because he was stronger, not because he was smarter, not because he had connections, but because, in God's own words, thou hast put thy trust in me. That's the reason. The only reason God gives. Trust, not heritage, not position, not theology. Trust demonstrated through action. The princes had names. They had seals. They had power. And they are gone. Ebed-Melech had no name, no seal, no power. And God said, I see you. But the real question isn't about ancient Jerusalem anymore. The real question is whether there's an Ebed-Melech moment waiting for you right now, and whether you'll recognize it when it comes. Here's what strikes me about this story. Ebed-Melech did not do anything extraordinary by the world's standard. He didn't lead an army. He didn't write a prophecy. He didn't build a temple. He went to a storehouse, found some rags, and pulled a man out of a hole. But that, in the economy of God, was everything. And I wonder how many Ebed-Melechs are watching this right now. People who feel like outsiders in their own world. People who carry a title instead of a name. Employee, caregiver, single parent, the quiet one in the back, and wonder if anyone notices. People who have done the right thing when it cost them something and never heard a thank you. If that's you, I want you to hear what God said to this man. Not what the king said, not what the princes said, what God said. I will deliver thee, not I might, not if you're good enough. I will, because thou hast put thy trust in me. And here's the part about heritage that I don't want anyone to miss. This story is not a footnote. An African man from Cush, from the land that is now Sudan, did not receive charity in this story. He was not a bystander. He was not decoration. He was the only person in an entire royal court who had the courage to act. And God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, looked at this Cushite servant and said, I will personally guarantee your survival. Africa is not in the margins of this book. Africa is holding the rope. The princes had their seals pressed in clay. God pressed Ebed-Melech's story into something that lasts longer than clay. He pressed it into Scripture, into the eternal Word. The men with names are forgotten. The man without a name is remembered forever. And that tells you everything about who God sees. At the beginning of this video, I asked you a question. Have you ever been the only one in the room who saw something wrong and wondered whether to speak up? Ebed-Melech answered that question. Not with theology, not with a sermon, with old rags and a rope. He didn't wait for permission from the system. He went to the king and said, "This is wrong." And then he did the work himself, carefully, gently, making sure even the rescue didn't cause more pain. And God saw it. God saw all of it. And God said, "I know your title. I know your origin. I know you have no name in this palace, but you have a name with me. And your life is mine to protect. Before you go, I want to pray over you. Lord, I pray for every person hearing this right now, wherever they are, driving home, lying in bed, doing the dishes with this playing in the background. I pray you meet them right where they are. Some of them feel invisible. Some of them have been doing the right thing for years and nobody's noticed. Some of them are standing in rooms where nobody looks like them, and they're wondering if they belong. I pray you show them what you showed Ebed-Melech, that you see them, that you know their name, even when no one else does, that their life is not a footnote. It is a promise. We walked through Jeremiah's words today, Lord, and we found a man with no name, who was remembered forever. Let every person watching know that the same God who spoke 4 sentences to a Cushite servant in a crumbling city is speaking to them right now in your name. Amen. If you're descended from a line of believers, if your grandmother prayed for you before you were even thought of, if your great-great-grandparents kept the faith, say, "I'm here because of her" in the comments, or because of him. Let's see how deep this line of faith goes. Because Ebed-Melech didn't come from nowhere. He came from Cush. He came from a people who had been crossing deserts and defending cities and standing before kings for centuries. And whatever line of faith brought you here tonight, it matters. Write it down. If this resonated, subscribe. We go deeper every week. Next week, we're going somewhere unexpected. There's a woman in the book of Genesis, an Egyptian woman, who was cast out into the desert twice. She had no name that anyone remembered, no power, no protection, and she became the first person in the Bible to give God a name. She called him El Roi, the God who sees me. If you thought Ebed-Melech's story was powerful, wait until you meet Hagar,